Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we've got another news and rumor video to discuss. In today's video, we're looking at some signings from our past couple of days, a couple of very interesting pieces of news, and we've got some trade rumors involving the Hawks, Leafs, Jackets, Bruins, and Flames. Go to all these updates from our past couple of days coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Now before we get started, don't forget to like this video and subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to without all of you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Don't forget to stay tuned for more videos coming out in the very near future. So in today's video, we've got another news and rumor video to discuss. As usual, we'll start off by touching on some signings from our past couple of days. As point in time, over the past week, we've only seen 8 signings. So touching all 8 of these signings that have happened from our past number of days. So first, in the Carolina Hurricanes organization, they signed 2 RFA players, one a forward prospect, one a defensive prospect, to new contracts. That was Ronan Seeley, the 22-year-old defensive prospect, and Ryan Suzuki, the 24-year-old offensive prospect. Suzuki gets a 1-year league minimum deal, and Seeley gets a 1-year deal, AAV of $814,000. Now for Seeley, it's a very interesting pickup here. Seeley is one of the top-end defensive prospects in the Hurricanes organization. At this current point in time, more of an AHL level guy, so probably won't get into much NHL action. Could be a call-up option, but I don't think 1 year under $850,000 for a decent call-up option or one of their younger defensive prospects is overly a bad deal there for the Hurricanes. Same thing with Suzuki. He got into some NHL options last year. It was call-up on a couple of occasions. More of an AHL level guy, but can be a call-up option. So 1 year league minimum for a decent call-up option is once again not a bad contract there for the Hurricanes. Very interesting note there. We then thought Tampa Bay Lightning gave an ELC to one of their 2025 draft selections. That second round pick, 56 overall in that draft, Ethan Zacha. Zacha, who is an 18-year-old center prospect. It's a 3-year ELC, $931,000 AAV. Really solid center prospect, like eventually, not anywhere in the near future, but I think eventually Zacha could be a solid second, third line center there for Tampa. It's going to take 2 to 3 years. Like, this isn't a guy who's going to play this upcoming season at the NHL level, but it's a guy who I do think in the long run could be really solid second or third line center there for the Tampa Bay Lightning. So very interesting note there, but they have signed Zacha to a 3-year ELC. Then we saw Seattle Kraken send one of their players who filed for arbitration, and that was Kakko, another guy who filed for arbitration, recently got signed. Kakko is 24 years old. He's a right winger, really burst out into a really solid situation in Seattle, played with Beniers, played with Schwartz, had some really solid numbers after arriving in Seattle. So to avoid arbitration, the Seattle Kraken has signed him to a 3-year deal, AAV of $4.525 million. Now at this point in time, I think that's a tiny bit of an overpayment because Kakko hasn't had sustained success at the NHL level, but he is a former second overall pick, worked out extremely well in Seattle, and I do think if he can replicate those performances next year and in the future, this sort of a deal might start to look like a very good steal of a deal for the Kraken. So while I don't think it's the greatest of contracts at this point in time, I think in time, if he continues to grow, it could be. So a very interesting pickup here for the Kraken as they're able to sign Kakko to a new deal. Then we saw the New Jersey Devils sign one of their RFAs to a new contract, and that's Thomas Bordeleau. Bordeleau was acquired July 2nd from the San Jose Sharks in a prospect swap with the Devils. Bordeleau was one of the guys who was offer sheet eligible, but one of the lower end guys who I didn't think was very likely to get offer sheet. He signs a 1-year league minimum deal. Bordeleau has in the past had some NHL opportunities. Like I think it was 2 years ago, had like 11 assists or 11 points in 27 NHL games. Last year, majority of the season was played at the AHL level. I think he had like 1 or 2 NHL games. So I could probably see him start at the AHL level again this year, but if the Devils run into some injuries, if he's doing really well at the AHL level, I could see Bordeleau be called up and be a solid bottom 6 forward. So very interesting out there, but 1-year league minimum for a decent player like that, not a bad deal in my opinion. Then, like we talked about in our last video, the Colorado Avalanche acquired Daniel Gushchin from the San Jose Sharks for Oscar Oleolson. Well, Gushchin was an RFA, so shortly after making that trade, the Avalanche signed Gushchin to an extension. The left winger, who's 23 years old, 1-year league minimum deal, not a bad deal there for the Avalanche. Gushchin's a solid prospect there. Like I said, I think he could challenge for some bottom 6 minutes in the Avalanche organization, so not a bad deal there. there, 1 year league minimum for a guy who could potentially be either a call-up option or a bomb six player. I don't think it's too bad. Then we saw another guy who filed for arbitration get signed before arbitration hit, and that was in the New York Islanders organization as Maxim Cypov, who's a 26-year-old right winger coming off his first pro season after having a whole bunch of good seasons over in the KHL. Signs a 2-year extension, AAV of $2.25 million. That's not a bad deal in my opinion. Tsyplakov worked out quite well, sort of like an unknown player as a middle six forward in the Islanders organization. Last season was a hard to play against, rough and tumble type forward, but also put up some pretty good point totals. So 2 years at 2.25 with where all the other contracts are being placed right now, I think that's quite a good deal there for the Islanders, and I think Tsyplakov is going to be a solid player there going forward for the New York Islanders. So very interesting note there. And then we saw a massive contract extension once again by the Carolina Hurricanes, and the Hurricanes extended Jackson Blake after playing his first full season at the NHL level. Only had to think like 80-90 games of NHL experience. The Carolina Hurricanes sent a 21-year-old right winger Blake to an 8-year extension with an AAV of $5.1 million. At this current point in time, that looks like a drastic overpayment for a player who just played in this first 80 or 90 games of his NHL career. But if he continues to grow as a solid top six forward and eventually starts having like 30-40 goal seasons, which is what his trajectory to be at this point in time, that could be a very good steal of a deal in a couple of years' time for the Hurricanes. So another long-term extension for the Carolina Hurricanes as they are able to sign Jackson Blake to a $5.1 million 8-year contract extension. So very interesting note there. But those are all signs from our past couple of days. Definitely some headliners, including Kakko, Tsyplakov, and an extension for Blake. So very interesting note there. Next, going over to a couple of pieces of news. So when it comes to the news portion of the video, we got a couple of things here to talk about. 4 first things are all involving players signing overseas. That's Charles Hudon, John Ludwig, Max Lagace, and Daniel Sprong. Now Hudon, more of an AHL level guy over the past couple of years, had experience in the NHL level with the Avalanche, with the Habs. He signs over in the SHL. John Ludwig, who the past couple of seasons was spending time in Florida and Pittsburgh, solid AHL defenseman who had been called upon on occasions, signs in Czechia. Max Lagace, who throughout his entire career has been more of a third string, fourth string goaltender, played majority in the AHL over the past couple of seasons, signed over in Austria. And Daniel Sprong, who a couple of years ago was one of the best bomb six forwards in the entire NHL, but had an atrocious season this past year in Seattle, Vancouver, and New Jersey, winds up signing in the KHL. So all these guys were most likely going to be AHL players at the start of this upcoming season had they signed an NHL level contract. So instead of that, they're going to going overseas, and we'll have to see how Hudon in the SHL, Ludwig in Czechia, Austria having Lagace and Sprong in the KHL all do. So very interesting note there. Before UFAs have signed overseas and are now be joining their overseas clubs instead of signing and staying in North America. So very interesting note there. We also saw Nathan Boileau, the former journeyman defenseman, has also called it a career. So very interesting note there. Boileau has retired. He spent, I think, 300, 400 plus games at the NHL level. He spent time with the Sabres, with the Jets, with the Habs, and there were a number of other teams that he also spent time with. He was a very solid third pair defenseman throughout his entire career. At some points was more of a second pair defenseman, but towards the tail end of his career, he was a third pair guy. I don't think he's even played at the NHL level the past couple of seasons. So Boileau has officially called it quits, and he has retired. So very interesting note there. According to some recent reports, the Sabres and Connor Timmins are not close to a new deal. Timmins is scheduled to be hitting arbitration in the next couple of days. So unless there's some solid work that's going to be done with the Sabres and Timmins over the next few days, it does sound like at this point in time the Sabres are going to have Connor Timmins hit free agency. So that is a very interesting update there when it comes to the Sabres and Connor Timmins. So we'll have to keep our eye on that situation leading over to the next couple of days. The New York Rangers have signed Connor Sheary to a PTO. Sheary has contract terminated by the Tampa Bay Lightning just before free agency started. So he was a UFA. He could stay wherever he wants. Didn't get an NHL opportunity, so he's going to go to the Rangers training camp on a professional tryout. And if he gets a solid look, does really good in training camp, I could see him sign like maybe a 1-year league minimum deal to be a solid bottom 6 forward in the Rangers organization. I could see something like that happen, so we could definitely see that wind up happening, and I wouldn't be one bit surprised if Sheary does well in training camp that he got a contract by the Rangers to be a solid bottom 6 guy. So I'll have to wait and see on that. And lastly, going over to the World Junior Championship update, the 2018 World Junior team, we know that there's the sex scandal that happened. It's been in the courts over the past couple of years. There was the Formanton, Dubé, Foote, McLeod, and Hart, who are all allegedly accused of having a sexual assault case, and there was a very interesting court case that happened. Well, apparently just a couple of days ago, all 5 players were found not guilty. So I know it's a very touchy subject. A lot of people are saying that these guys have had their careers ruined and been found not guilty of anything, while there are other people who said that they probably should never play the NHL level again, because even though they haven't been found guilty, they doesn't mean they're completely innocent and everything. So I'm not going to get too deep into this. Like, I think at the very least they should be given the same sort of treatment that Joel Quenneville and Stan Bowman were given when they were found to be part of the Chicago Blackhawks cover-up. Like, they were given 2 to 3 years, I think, out of the NHL to think about what they've done, and once they showed the NHL they've changed their actions, they were able to come back. Like, I know there are a lot of Edmonton Oilers fans out there saying they're going to sign Carter Hart. I know there are a couple of other fans saying that they should go after a guy like Michael McLeod or a guy like Dylan Dubé. Like, these guys are really good NHL players, but I think they have to probably stay out of the NHL for at least a couple more years to think about what they've done. Like, I don't think anything's going to happen this offseason, and the NHL's even said that they're not eligible to return to the NHL at this point in time. So if they have changed their ways and they've put that past behind them and they're trying to do better going forward, maybe in a couple of years' time I could see him get some NHL opportunities, but I highly doubt that any one of those 5 guys are going to get signed before the season starts this year, and I'd be highly surprised if that happens. So we'll have to wait and see on that, but the court has found those 5 players not guilty, and we'll have to see what the NHL does going forward with those 5 players. But at least for a time being, those 5 players have been found not guilty in court. So very interesting out there. I still think they should wait at least a couple more years before they could be wound up being eligible to play at the NHL level again. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But that's all the news updates on our past couple of days involving the World Junior stuff. The Sheary signing a PTO, Timmins and the Sabres, Boyle retiring, and the 4 players signing overseas. Next, going over to a couple of trade rumors. So when it comes to some trade rumors, we've got some very interesting trade rumors here to talk about. We're going to start with the Chicago Blackhawks. Most of the things we're going to talk about here today is from the 4thperiod.com. There are a couple of other things that are from other sources, but most of this is from the 4thperiod.com. So the 4th period mentioned that the Chicago Blackhawks have been getting calls on Lukas Reichel and are listening on those calls. So apparently Lukas Reichel is a guy who the Hawks could be listening on. Apparently, according to 4thperiod.com, the Hawks are willing to package a couple of assets to get some much needed help now. So we know the Hawks were a very quiet team in free agency. Didn't do what they did last year where they signed guys like Teravainen, Bertuzzi, etc., all those big time guys. They didn't do very much this past off season where they basically just re-signed all of their players, maybe signed a couple of depth guys. Really didn't do much in free agency or even in the trade market. Like, I think their only trade was acquiring Andrei Burakovsky. So with that in mind, I could see them try and package, because they have a lot of really solid prospects in their system. They have a couple of really solid draft picks in the next couple of drafts. So with that in mind, I could see them try and package something together to try and maybe go after one of those top end guys. Like, I would probably think it would probably have to be someone who's on like a 2 or 3 year deal, maybe an older type player, or maybe a younger type player who's cost controlled. Like, a guy who comes to mind would be a guy like Brian Rust or Rickard Raquel. Like, those guys could be really solid fits on Connor Bedard wing. Now, it would make a whole bunch of sense with where the Hawks are in the rebuild. Not exactly sure, but that's the sort of thing I could try and see them try and package Reichel with to try and get. So we're going to wait and see on that, but apparently the Hawks have had calls on Lukas Reichel and are listening on him, and we could see a Lukas Reichel trade at some point in the very near future, so we'll have to wait and see on that. Also, according to the 4thperiod.com, they say the market has not been very vibrant for Calle Jarnkrok, but the Leafs are continuing to try and deal him. So very interesting note there. Jarnkrok, who thinks entering the final year for his deal, has a $2.1 million cap hit. He's coming off a season where he had a really bad injury troubles, so I can certainly definitely be some teams out there who would be hesitant, especially with this over $2 million cap hit. But Jarnkrok still has the potential to be a solid 15 to 20 goal scorer, has the potential to be a solid 40 to 50 point player if he's healthy in the right situation, playing top 9 minutes. So I still think at this point in time, Jarnkrok's more likely to start the season on the Leafs roster and then sometime closer to the trade deadline when the Leafs are looking to try and get some upgrades, they could try and trade him at that point. I think that's probably more likely because I don't think there's a market for Yarno at this point in time. So my guess would be they give him top 9 minutes, try and increase his stats, increase his value, trade him closer to the trade deadline to free up some cap space to go after someone else. That's personally what I think the Leafs will do at this point in time. Maybe they try and trade him before season starts. That's a possibility. I could definitely see it happening. But at this point in time, I don't think there's enough market out there for Yarno to get moved. So we'll have to keep our eye on that. But according to 4thperiod.com, the market hasn't been too vibrant for Yarno, but the Leafs are going to try and keep on trading him. Next, going over to Columbus Blue Jackets, the 4thperiod.com also mentions that the Jackets could try and dangle Voronkov in a trade package to try and get themselves a massive upgrade. We've heard about the Jackets trying to make some sort of big strides this offseason to try and get better. They haven't really done much. They kept Fabro and Provorov around. They traded for Charlie Coyle and Miles Wood, and they signed Isaac Lundestrom. That's basically been the extent of the Jackets offseason. They also dealt the Nil Tarasov, so they still have some questions in net. And I think adding 1 to 2 top 6, top 9 forwards who have some veteran experience would not be an overly bad move there from the Jackets either. I mentioned guys like Brian Rust and Rickard Rakell as very likely options there for the Jackets at target. If Robertson became available in Dallas, maybe that's a possibility too. And there's probably a couple of other guys out there who are solid top 6 forwards who the Jackets could try and target. So would dangling Voronkov in a trade package get them one of those top 6 upgrades? I think it would. He signed a 2-year deal this offseason with just over $4 million AAV, but he is a guy who has the potential to be a solid 30 to 40 goal scorer at the NHL level. He is a lethal goal scorer with a lethal shot. I don't think the Jackets should trade him personally. I think it's more likely that they should trade some of their other younger prospects. Maybe a guy like Igor Chinnikov who's asked for a trade. But I don't think they should trade Voronkov because I think going forward he's going to be a massive piece of that team's lineup. But if there's a team like Pittsburgh or Dallas who need to trade some of those guys and they can get their hands on a guy like Dmitry Voronkov, I think you do that deal all day. So I don't think the Jackets should trade him from the Jackets' point of view. But I think if there was to try and get them some sort of a massive upgrade, I could see where they try and do that. So I'll have to wait and see on that. But keep your eye on the Jackets. They could definitely try and go after Voronkov. Next, going over to the Boston Bruins, also going to the 4thperiod.com, the Bruins explored trying to move Pavel Zacha earlier in the offseason, at the beginning of the offseason, and apparently they could be trying to do it again. So Zacha, he's got 2 years left, just over $4 million cap hit. He can play center, he can play wing. He's been a really solid add there for the Boston Bruins since coming over from the New Jersey Devils in a player swap a couple of years ago. Worked out really well in their top 6, but if the Bruins are going through some sort of a small retool or rebuild, their timeline might not fit with Pavel Zacha, who's going to be a UFA in 2 years' time. So with that in mind, I could definitely see the Bruins try and move him. If they're able to get like a young player back, like that would make some sense. If they're able to get like some sort of a solid draft pick and a prospect, I think that makes some sense too. And with the amount of teams out there like Montreal, Carolina, Vancouver, to name a few, who are in desperate need of a second line center. Like Zacha was never going to be a top line center in Boston, but he's a very solid second line center. And for teams like Carolina, Montreal, Vancouver, etc., who are in desperate need of a center upgrade, I could see Zacha be a very interesting add there for those teams. So do I think there's a guarantee that Zacha's going to move before the start of the season? No. I think there's a very likely chance the Bruins run into the season with Zacha. But I wouldn't be one bit surprised if he was out before the season started, and if he's still around in the Boston organization leading up to the trade deadline. I think he's going to be a name that comes up a whole bunch in the rumor mill. So we're going to wait and see on that. But keep your eye on the Boston Bruins. They could try and move Pavel Zacha. And lastly, going over to the Calgary Flames, according to Frank Seravalli, he mentioned that the Calgary Flames at this current point in time are not interested in moving Nazem Kadri, and that it would take a massive package to pry him out of the Calgary Flames organization. So at this point in time, it seems like Kadri's not going to get moved from Calgary. We've heard that from Pagnota and Dreger as well. It seems like all this rumors about Kadri being on the block and potentially being moved are not really legit rumors, and it sounds like the Flames are really intent on keeping Kadri. So I don't think Kadri will get moved at this point in time. Like I said earlier in a couple of the videos ago, I could see Kadri if he was still being mentioned at the trade deadline and the Flames really wanted to move him off to try and get closer to McKenna and get a little bit worse going into the post-trade deadline stuff. I could see Kadri wind up getting moved. I could see Toronto being a landing spot spot. So I don't think it's going to happen before the season starts. Like, I think the Flames are probably going to go into the season with this current lineup, potentially minus Rasmus Anderson if they're able to find him a trade. And with all that in mind, I could definitely see Kadri get moved, maybe closer to trade deadline or next offseason. Probably not this offseason though. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. But Seravalli does say that it would take a big offer to try and pry Kadri out of Calgary, and at this point in time, Kadri is not for sale from the Calgary Flames. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. But that's what we're talking for today. I'll let you guys' thoughts. Do you think Kadri gets moved? Could it be this offseason? Do you think the Bruins move Zacha, the Jackets move Voronkov, the Leafs move Yarno, or the Hawks move Reichel? Definitely your thoughts on all of that. Plus all the news updates, including the World Junior stuff and the signings from our past couple of days. Definitely your thoughts on all of that down in the comment section below. That's all I'm going to talk for today. Remember to like this video, and if you're relative, subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to with all of you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Don't forget to stay tuned for more videos coming out in the very near future. I also do a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that, so check that out. I've linked that down in the description below. Can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.